My wife tricked me into having a kid, then ran off with him, claiming she had to protect him from men like me. I got him back and slammed the door in her face for good. Now, years later, she's crawling back, begging our son to forgive her. When we first got together, I thought she was everything I'd ever wanted. I remember driving her home after our first date, playing a song I loved on the stereo. She told me she didn't care for it. I just smiled and said it was all about the melody, it grows on you. About 20 seconds later, she nodded and said, "Actually, I kinda like it now." Right then, I realized just how soft and open she was to my opinions. I felt the strong urge to protect her no matter what. But even I couldn't shield her from the poison that radical feminism would pour into her life. You have to understand, I didn't always hate feminists. Not until she started hanging around this group near her office. At first glance, they just looked like a bunch of supportive friends. Real tight-knit group, lots of talk about sisterhood and empowerment. But after having one dinner with them, I felt like ending it all. They lived to be offended, like it was their personal mission. I held the door open for them once, and one of them stomped on my foot with her heel. "That's for assuming women can't do things on their own," she snapped. Later, when I paid for everyone's meal, the woman next to me pinched my arm and said, "Women have jobs too, you know." But when I asked if anyone wanted to chip in by sending me money on Zelle, the whole table went dead quiet. Go figure. That dinner was the moment the fog started to lift. Up until then, all the arguments at home had felt like complete nonsense. If she found a dirty sock on the floor, she'd somehow twist that into an argument about why people don't take sexual assault allegations seriously. Because, no one respects women. And God forbid I asked her to play a song I liked while she had the AUX in the car. She'd fire back with something like, "Of course you want to control the music, typical man, always making things about himself." Honestly, it got so bad. I asked her to take a pregnancy test. I figured her hormones were all over the place. When it came back negative, I knew the real problem wasn't her biology, it was her friends. They were tearing our marriage apart. But if you know anything about me, you know I'm the last damn guy to give up on a marriage. Not for myself, not even for her, but for our son, Caleb. He was already attached to her. Thought of her as his mom. So I did everything I could. I tried a little manipulation, not anything wild. Just had her meet some of my friends, people who respected both men and women. Hoping she'd see how normal relationships worked. Didn't help. So then I went all out, boat rides, fancy hotels. Even decked out our bedroom with huge Valentine's Day setups. Multiple times. Just to show her I cared. Still, nothing. Not a single thank you. No change in how she acted. Just more attitude, telling me I was doing the bare minimum. And she deserved way more. So as a last-ditch effort, I tried mirroring her. Played her music, even the ones loaded with profanity. Treated men just like she treated them. Hell, I even got my nails done clear gel, but still. Thought maybe she'd appreciate the effort. But just when I thought we were turning a corner, I came home to Caleb bawling his eyes out. She was the only one home with him. But while he was upstairs crying, she was lounging downstairs. It didn't make sense. I picked him up and helped him breathe, something we always did together when he got overwhelmed. When he calmed down, he stripped off his clothes. And what I saw nearly made me puke. Bruises and marks all over his little arms, legs, and chest. No way those came from a kid. That was the work of an adult. I didn't say a word. I got him dressed and drove straight to my sister's place. Then I came back and, for the first time ever, I yelled at her. "Was that you?" I asked. She rolled her eyes. "Oh, here we go. Man yelling at woman because his ego's bruised. Did you lay a hand on Caleb?" I asked again. She actually looked surprised I was standing up to her. "You should be thanking me," she said. "I'm making sure he doesn't grow up to be just another garbage man like the rest." I stopped listening after that. If she hadn't been a woman, I swear I might have lost control. But instead, I took a deep breath and said, "We're done." Then I walked out and drove back to my sister's place. I figured once the divorce was done, that'd be the end of it. I was wrong. A few weeks later, she and her feminist gang broke into my sister's house while I was at work. I got an alert from the security system and called the cops immediately. But by the time they arrived, Caleb was gone. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my hands went numb. Racing back to my sister's place. The driveway was swarming with cops when I pulled up. One of them came over as I stumbled out of my car. I told him everything here. How my ex-wife had hurt our boy. How I brought Caleb to my sister's to keep him safe. How the security footage caught them breaking in. The officer took notes, his face getting more serious with every word. Inside, my sister was in shambles. She kept apologizing, said she had just stepped out for groceries. The back door had been busted open, the lock wrecked. Caleb's clothes and toys were scattered across the guest room. The detective started asking me questions about my ex's behavior, her friends, how things had been going lately. I told him everything, how it had all gotten worse over time, how I'd found Caleb hurt. He nodded and wrote it all down. They issued an Amber Alert right away. Caleb's school picture started popping up on phones everywhere. 6 years old, brown hair, hazel eyes, last seen in his favorite dinosaur shirt. Seeing his little smiling face on that screen just wrecked me. I spent the next few hours at the police station, giving them every lead I could think of. Names, places, her work, her family. The detective promised they were doing everything they could. By the time I left the station, I was completely wiped. But there was no way I could rest. I drove to her job, hoping someone might know something. The receptionist recognized me. Her face turned cold real fast. She said my ex had taken unexpected leave 3 days earlier. No explanation, just said it was personal. I asked about her friends, and the receptionist got even stiffer. Said those women showed up often during lunch. I tried calling my ex straight to voicemail. Her parents hadn't heard from her in weeks. Her sister hung up the second she heard my voice. Every trail led nowhere. Back at my sister's, I sat in Caleb's temporary room, looking at his toys spread across the floor. I thought about those breathing exercises we used to do together. He was going to need them now more than ever. Then my phone buzzed. It was the detective. Said they tracked her car to an ATM a few towns over. But after that, the trail went cold. Security cameras showed her alone, wearing a hat and sunglasses. No sign of Caleb. No sign of her friends. I couldn't just sit and wait. I jumped on social media, dug through profiles of her friends. Most were locked down, but one wasn't. She'd posted pictures from what looked like a cabin in the mountains. There was a big red barn in one of the shots. I took screenshots and sent them to the detective. He said they'd check it out, but warned me not to do anything myself. Last thing we needed was me getting arrested. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Caleb's bruises, heard his sobs from that night, imagined her downstairs, messaging her friends, bragging about fixing him. The next morning, I got a call. The detective said they'd found the cabin, but it was empty. Fresh tire tracks in the dirt meant someone had just left. They were checking nearby traffic cams. I started visiting places my ex used to go. The organic grocery store where she met those women, the yoga studio, the coffee shop where they had their meetups. At the coffee shop, I saw a barista I recognized. She remembered me too. When I told her what was going on, her eyes widened. She said the group had come in just yesterday. Sat in the corner booth, whispering the whole time. She couldn't hear much, but remembered someone talking about protecting the future and necessary sacrifices. One of them paid with a credit card, Margot Ellis. I gave that name to the detective right away. He sounded grateful. An hour later, he called me back. Margot had rented a place 3 hours north, paid up front for a full month. The cops were on their way to check it out. He told me firmly to stay put, but I couldn't sit still. Caleb had been gone for over 30 hours. Every second counted. I drove around, trying to think like her. Where would she go? Where would they take a child if they thought they were saving him? They needed somewhere far from people. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I'm glad I did. The voice on the other end was a woman I didn't recognize at first. She said she used to be part of that group, but had distanced herself months ago. She saw Caleb's Amber Alert and felt sick. Said she couldn't stay silent anymore. She told me the group had gotten darker. What started as empowerment had turned into something much more dangerous. She told me they'd been talking about one of the members' old family farmhouses, someplace way out in the sticks, where they could reprogram young boys before the world messed them up. She didn't know exactly where it was, but remembered it being near a little town called Millbrook. I thanked her again and again, then immediately rang the detective. He said they were still combing through the rental property, but he'd add Millbrook to their search. The net was tightening. That evening, I sat with my sister in silence, both of us glued to our phones, just waiting for some kind of news. She kept blaming herself, saying she should have been more careful. But I told her, this wasn't her fault. The only people responsible were my ex-wife and her insane friends. The detective called around 8 p.m. They'd found signs the group had been at the rental house recently. Kids' clothes, food wrappers, toys. But they were gone. Probably tipped off somehow. He told me they were broadening the search. But I couldn't just sit there feeling useless anymore. I told my sister I needed some air and drove straight toward Millbrook. I wasn't planning to mess with the investigation. I just needed to be closer to where Caleb might be. That 3-hour drive gave me way too much time to think. What were they saying to him? Were they punishing him for missing me? For crying? Those breathing exercises we used to do together. They weren't supposed to help him survive a damn kidnapping. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles were white. Millbrook was a tiny place. One main road, a few scattered farms outside town. I stopped at the gas station and showed the guy behind the counter photos of my ex and Caleb. He hadn't seen them, but said the lady who ran the diner might know more. The diner was closed, but I spotted an older woman locking up. I told her everything. Showed her Caleb's Amber Alert photo on my phone. Her whole face changed. She said a group of women had come in earlier that day, grabbed food to go. One of them had a young boy with her. My heart jumped into my throat. I asked for any detail she could remember. She said the boy was quiet, real subdued. The women paid cash and didn't hang around. One of them mentioned staying at the old Hendricks place. But the woman didn't know where that was. Told me to check in at the police station. I called the detective again right away. Told him everything. He thanked me, but told me firmly, go home. They'd take it from here. I said I would. But instead I started driving the back roads around Millbrook, watching for anything that looked like an old farmhouse. Then I saw it. A flash of red barn peeking through the trees. Just like the one I'd seen in that social media photo. My pulse started hammering. I pulled off to the side of the road, trying to think clearly. The smart move was to call the cops. Give them the exact location. Let them do their job. I reached for my phone, and that's when I saw him. A little figure in a dinosaur shirt, walking beside a woman toward the house. Caleb. My boy was right there, maybe 300 yards away. I called the detective with shaking hands. Gave him GPS coordinates and everything. He said officers were 15 minutes out. Told me not to get out of the car, no matter what. I agreed, even though everything in me was screaming to run to my son. 15 minutes felt like a lifetime. I watched the house. Lights flicked on inside. There were 4 cars in the driveway. They were all in there. The whole toxic group. Just as I felt like I couldn't take another second, I heard sirens in the distance. The police response was fast and clean. They boxed in the property. Officers moving in with a warrant. I stayed by my car like I was told, watching the whole thing unfold. Then came shouting. Figures running out the back door. An officer came out the front. And even from where I was, I could see he was carrying someone. Small. Wearing a dinosaur shirt. I ran. Didn't even think. Just ran. The officer recognized me from the station. Before I knew it, Caleb was in my arms. He held on to me like he'd never let go. Didn't say anything at first, just sobbed. I held him close. Guided him through our breathing exercises. Just like we'd always done. The detective showed up moments later. Said they'd arrested all 5 women. My ex-wife included. They found journals and documents. Proof of their twisted plans to save boys from becoming men. The prosecutor would have more than enough evidence. I took Caleb straight to the hospital. He needed to be looked over. Not just the old injuries, but any new ones too. In the ER, he wouldn't let go of my hand. The nurses were kind, gentle. Talked to him softly as they checked him out. When they asked questions, he just buried his face in my shoulder. The doctor confirmed what I already knew. The bruises matched physical abuse. She took detailed notes. Snapped photos for the file. Caleb whimpered during the exam, and I had to step out twice just to keep it together. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed nonstop. Friends, family, co-workers. Everyone who saw the Amber Alert update. I ignored them all. Only Caleb mattered. The detective met us at the hospital later on. He told me my ex-wife was being held without bail. Kidnapping, abuse, serious charges. Her friends were looking at time too. Then he dropped the bomb. She already had a lawyer and was telling people that I was the one who'd hurt Caleb, claiming she'd taken him to protect him from me. Said the bruises were from my hands, not hers. The detective told me the evidence was on my side. But I saw it in his eyes. He was worried. That night, Caleb slept in my bed. He wouldn't let me go. Every time I moved. Even to get up and pee. He woke up crying. The social worker came the next morning. Told me his behavior was normal for trauma. She gave me pamphlets. Child therapy, support groups, timelines. My sister came over and did everything she could. Cooked food I couldn't eat. Cleaned stuff that didn't need it. We were just trying to stay busy. Caleb stuck to me like glue. Followed me from room to room. Then came the knock. Process server. Papers. My ex was filing for emergency custody. Said I was the dangerous one. Her lawyer spun this tale. About her being a loving mom. Trying to save her son from an abusive father. I called my lawyer right away. He told me not to panic. That we had plenty of proof. But when I hung up, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. She was really going to try and flip the whole thing. The next few days were a blur. Legal meetings, therapy for Caleb. Follow-up interviews with the cops. Caleb started to talk. But only to me. And what he said made my blood boil. He told me they made him sit in a corner if he cried for me. Said I didn't want him anymore. Told him all men were bad. Even him. Her lawyer was good, eh? Too damn good. Started filing motions left and right. Requesting delays, demanding access to records. He made her out to be some desperate, heroic mom who'd made a mistake while trying to protect her child. The women who helped her? They were now just concerned friends. Helping her escape a dangerous home. Then came the restraining order. She said I threatened her. Right before we separated. Claimed she feared for her life. The judge granted it. A temporary order, but still. I couldn't go near her. Couldn't call. Couldn't even respond to her lies. My lawyer said it was a classic move. Make me look unstable, violent. Build a case that I was the real danger. Me driving to Millbrook without police permission? Yeah, that didn't help. They said it proved I was reckless. Caleb's therapist became the one constant I could trust. She kept track of everything. Documented what Caleb was dealing with. But healing was slow. He barely talked. Mostly drew pictures. Dark ones. Angry-looking faces. A little boy separated from a bigger figure by thick black lines. The custody hearing was set for 2 weeks out. My lawyer warned me. It was going to be brutal. They'd go after my character. My parenting. Try to explain away the bruises like they were nothing. So I documented everything. Every nightmare. Every time he flinched. Every therapy session. My phone became my witness. Recording every little sign of his trauma or progress. Then her narrative started picking up traction online. Some of her feminist friends who hadn't been arrested launched a social media campaign. Posted old photos of her with Caleb. Long emotional posts about abuse. About how the courts don't protect moms. I couldn't defend myself. My lawyer told me stay off social media. So I watched it all happen. Every comment. Every share. Even people who knew me started to wonder. Some coworkers got distant. When I came back to work part-time, conversation stopped when I walked in. My boss pulled me aside. Said maybe I should take more time off. Focus on the legal stuff. Meanwhile, Caleb couldn't handle daycare anymore. Panicked whenever I tried to leave him. So my sister stepped in. Still, he'd call me crying, begging me to come home. The therapist said it was normal. Didn't feel normal. Felt like dying slowly. Then Elena Torres called again. She'd seen the social media posts and was disgusted. Said she wanted to help. Said she'd testify. Show what the group was really planning. She had the receipts. Text messages, even recordings. We met up at a park while Caleb played nearby. He never let me out of his sight. Elena showed me everything. Messages about deprogramming young boys. They had group chats talking about taking kids away from toxic masculine influences. Turns out, they'd been planning all of this long before Caleb was even taken. The messages were damning. It wasn't just spur-of-the-moment stuff. It was all premeditated. They talked about how to make dads look abusive. Shared articles about custody cases, where mothers had twisted facts to win full rights. And right in the middle of it all, my ex-wife, replying, commenting, encouraging. When I handed all this to my lawyer, he lit up like Christmas. But he also warned me, Elena might face a hell of a backlash for speaking up. And he was right. Within days, the same online mob that had praised her turned on her. They called her a traitor. Said she was clout-chasing, or that I must have paid her off. But Elena didn't budge. She said she left that group because she saw what they'd become. What started as support for women had turned into something hateful, dangerous. She said she couldn't just stand by and watch them tear families apart. The first legal hurdle was the restraining order hearing. My ex-wife showed up looking all fragile. Like she hadn't eaten in days. Wore her hair down, no makeup. Played the victim to perfection. Her lawyer painted me as a bully. Said I was the kind of man who couldn't handle a woman with her own voice. Controlling, aggressive, entitled. But then my lawyer rolled the security footage from my sister's house. There it was, plain as day. My ex and her crew breaking in to snatch Caleb. The judge's face changed. The act wasn't working anymore. The restraining order against me got tossed. Her lawyer scrambled and managed to get a mutual no-contact order instead. It wasn't much, but it was something. Meanwhile, Caleb was making progress in therapy. He was starting to talk more about what happened. The therapist was putting together a report for court. But she warned me. Family court doesn't always play fair. Even with strong evidence, the outcome could go either way. My ex's online campaign kicked into high gear. She gave interviews to sympathetic bloggers, went on podcasts about women's rights and protective parenting. She was clever, didn't outright lie, but twisted the truth, until it didn't even resemble reality anymore. Suddenly, she wasn't just some mom in a custody battle. She was becoming a symbol in certain circles. I stayed focused on Caleb. Every single day was about his recovery, his peace of mind, his healing. We built new routines together. Long bedtime stories because he was scared to fall asleep. Meals where he'd only eat after I took the first bite, just to be sure the food was safe. The detective called with another update. They'd found more stuff at the farmhouse. Evidence they'd been watching other families too. Planning more kidnappings. The criminal case was strong. But sadly, that didn't guarantee a custody win. So my lawyer brought in a private investigator. We needed to expose who my ex really was, not who she pretended to be. The PI dug up all kinds of stuff. Financial records, big money transfers to her friends, meetings in hotels, all paid in cash. It painted a picture of lies, manipulation, and something way darker than concerned motherhood. But she wasn't sitting still either. Her team dug into my past, talked to ex-girlfriends, old coworkers, looking for anything to paint me as violent or controlling. They even found an old college bar fight, blew it up like it was some pattern of aggression. Then Caleb's 78th birthday came. No party. He just wanted to stay home with me. So we baked a cake together, his little hands stirring the mix. Just the two of us. When it was time to blow out the candles, he leaned in close and whispered, "I wish the bad ladies never come back." The criminal trial was scheduled just before the custody hearing. My lawyer said that was a blessing. A conviction would go a long way in court, but her lawyer tried every trick in the book. Separate trials, delays, confusion. Still, more people came forward. Parents from Caleb's school who noticed changes in him. After my ex started acting differently. Neighbors who heard her screaming at him for acting too much like a boy. Every testimony helped. But the whole fight was wearing me down. Her lawyer pushed for supervised visits. Said I was alienating Caleb from his mom. The idea of Caleb seeing her again turned my stomach. The therapist backed me up. Said it would re-traumatize him. The judge agreed to hold off. Another small win. But her lawyer spun it to the media, claiming I was poisoning Caleb's mind against her. The online battle raged harder. New hashtags popped up. Hashtag justice for mothers. Hashtag believe protective moms. Strangers on the internet dragged my name through the mud. Used Caleb's trauma as fuel for their cause. I had to pull Caleb from daycare 3 times. Each time, protesters showed up outside. Not many, but enough to scare the staff. They held signs accusing dads of abusing legal systems. Called me dangerous. Even my sister got vague threats. She installed cameras, alarms, floodlights. Never complained. But I saw it. This was taking a toll on her too. We were all being punished for trying to keep Caleb safe. Then finally, a break. Margot Ellis, one of the arrested women, decided to cooperate with the prosecution. She said she didn't know it would go that far. Thought it was just about education, not hurting kids. Her testimony would be huge. My ex's lawyer tried to discredit her. Said she was just angling for a lighter sentence. But Margot had receipts. Videos of their planning sessions. Screenshots. Chats. Proof that blew holes in everything my ex had claimed. The custody hearing got delayed 3 times. Every delay was more stress. More time explaining to a 7-year-old why the bad stuff wasn't over yet. I was out of ways to make legal processes kid-friendly. So we just kept living. Mornings with double-lock checks. Afternoons in public parks and busy places. Evenings proving over and over, "I'm not going anywhere." Then my ex slipped up. She went on another podcast, got too comfortable, started ranting about how all men are violent, how boys need to be corrected from birth. The host sensed drama and let her talk. My lawyer got the transcript the next day, highlighted everything. She talked about Caleb like he was a project, said she'd been planning intervention for months, said dads didn't really matter in parenting. Her fan base spun it, claimed she was misquoted or trapped. But the damage was done. Truth stopped mattering to most people anyway. Caleb started kindergarten at a new school. I'd screened it like a hawk, spoke with everyone, told them everything. They were good folks, had extra security, supportive staff. Still, I sat in the parking lot for the first hour every day, just in case. But slowly, real healing started. Caleb began playing with kids again. His drawings were less dark. He still needed breathing exercises, but not all the time anymore. The therapist said he was strong, said kids can bounce back if they're safe. Then the criminal trial began. I had to take the stand, had to relive the whole thing, finding Caleb, seeing the bruises. The day she took him, my ex sat there looking pitiful again. But this time, the courtroom wasn't buying it. Her friends didn't look so confident anymore. Her lawyer tried to twist it, called me controlling, accused me of exaggerating. But the doctor's records told the truth. Photos, injury reports, therapist notes. The jury didn't need convincing. Elena Torres's testimony sealed the deal. She explained how the group had gone off the rails, how empowerment became something hateful. She had hard proof, messages, recordings, plans. The defense couldn't touch her. Verdict: guilty on all counts. Kidnapping, abuse, conspiracy. My ex looked genuinely shocked, like she still believed her own lies. Her friends got varying sentences, depending on their roles. It was justice, but it didn't undo what Caleb had lived through. The custody hearing felt like an afterthought. Her lawyer tried to argue that criminal court had nothing to do with parenting, but the judge had heard enough. Full custody to me, supervised visits only, and even those only after therapy classes. And Caleb's therapist signed off. My ex flipped out in the courtroom, screamed about injustice, claimed the system hated women, said fathers' rights were being used like weapons. But it was done. Legally, I'd won. But emotionally, it wasn't over. Caleb still had nightmares, still asked why she hurt him, still needed healing. But we were safe now. The courts had finally seen what I always knew. She was the danger, not me. The internet moved on eventually. New hashtags, new headlines. Some folks would always believe her version. Didn't matter anymore. What mattered was Caleb. Healing, growing, becoming a kid again. 5 months later, we moved. New city, new school, new therapist, one who specialized in trauma. Caleb started making friends again, started laughing more. Our breathing exercises became less about panic, more about peace. Sometimes, he'd still ask about her. I'd tell him simple truths. Mommy's thinking got sick. It wasn't your fault. You're safe now. Always. He'd nod, think it over, and then he'd go back to being a kid. Recovery wasn't some straight road. There were still rough days, triggers we didn't see coming. But more and more, the good days started to outnumber the bad. He scored his first goal at soccer practice, asked to go to sleepovers on his own. His report cards came back with nothing but praise. He was thriving. Eventually, I started dating again, carefully, always making sure Caleb came first. He was cautious, but not closed off. His therapist helped him understand that not all women were like his mom, that love could be safe, that real relationships were built on respect, not fear. Looking back, I can see the signs were always there. The way she changed her mind about that song on our first date. I thought it showed flexibility. Now I see it might have been instability. The shift in her friend group. The way her thinking got more extreme. Suddenly, everything was an example of oppression. But I never could have predicted it would go that far. That something meant to empower could twist into something that hurt a child. That she could convince herself hurting Caleb was somehow saving him. The court battles taught me how to be resilient. How to keep fighting even when the truth felt buried under noise. How to protect the people you love, even when it feels like the world's against you. Documentation, witnesses, patience, never giving up. Caleb taught me what real healing looks like. How kids can recover when they're surrounded by love. How something as small as a breathing exercise can become a lifeline during trauma, and eventually, a symbol of strength. We still do those breathing routines sometimes. Not because we have to, because it reminds us how far we've come. The scars are still there. Some physical, most emotional, but they're fading. Caleb's turning into a kind, confident young man. He knows what happened, but it doesn't define him. He understands that strength isn't about being a man. It's about character. And me? I learned that protecting your kid sometimes means going to war you never expected. That truth wins eventually, even when lies are louder. That healing is slow, but real. That love, real, steady, protective love, is the most powerful thing in the world. The years that followed weren't always easy, but they were ours. By the time Caleb started 7th grade, we were living in a place where no one knew our history. He'd gotten taller, almost up to my shoulder. His confidence came back in ways that honestly surprised me. Those old breathing exercises? He started teaching them to other kids who struggled with anxiety. By then, I'd gotten remarried. Rachel was a pediatric nurse who understood trauma, who understood why Caleb still sometimes needed to make sure I was in the room. She met us at one of his therapy sessions, volunteering her time to help kids with tough backgrounds. Caleb warmed up to her slowly, but it was real, genuine. Then one day, a letter came. Official prison stationery. My ex-wife's handwriting. My hand shook just opening it. She was getting out. Good behavior. All the rehabilitation boxes checked. It had been 6 years since the trial. Now she wanted to see Caleb. I called my lawyer right away. He reminded me. The custody order still stood. She only got supervised visitation, if the therapist approved, and if Caleb agreed. Caleb was 12 now, old enough that the court would listen to what he wanted. That night, I sat down with him and showed him the letter. He read it all the way through, silently. Couldn't read his face. When he was done, he looked up and asked, "Can she make me see her?" I told him the truth. No. He had a choice now. He took his time, thought about it for days. Rachel and I didn't push. His therapist made herself available for extra sessions. Finally, Caleb came to me and said, "I want to see her once. I need to ask her why." So we arranged the meeting at a family counseling center. Neutral ground. Professional supervision. I waited in the lobby. Rachel held my hand while the clock dragged on. An hour later, Caleb came out. His eyes were red, but his back was straight. He told me she cried, apologized, said it was the ideology that it had consumed her. But when he asked her straight up if she still believed those things about men, about him, she hesitated. That moment told him everything he needed to know. He never asked to see her again. The court honored his choice. She sent a few more letters after that, but we kept them in a sealed box. Caleb said maybe he'd read them someday, but not yet. Not while he was still figuring out who he wanted to be. Elena Torres stayed in our lives. She became a speaker, an advocate for cult awareness, focused on how extreme ideologies can sneak into even well-meaning movements. She talked at conferences about how radicalization doesn't always look scary at first, how it can feel like sisterhood, like safety. Caleb called her Aunt Ellie. My sister never fully forgave herself for that day Caleb was taken, no matter how many times I told her it wasn't her fault. The guilt stayed with her, so she put it into action, installed security systems for other single parents, volunteered with nonprofits that help families escape dangerous situations. High school brought new challenges. Caleb discovered he was good at debate. Ironic, I guess. All he'd been through gave him a sharp eye for how good intentions can be twisted. His teachers praised his ability to see multiple sides of an argument without losing his sense of right and wrong. Eventually, he started dating. I'll admit, I was nervous, worried he might have inherited some bad patterns, worried he'd either be too guarded or too forgiving. But Rachel talked me down, and sure enough, he handled it better than I ever could have hoped. Honest communication, firm boundaries, walked away when people showed red flags. When he got accepted to college, we celebrated quiet but proud. He picked a school 3 states away, far enough to grow, close enough to come home if he needed. He chose to study psychology, said he wanted to understand what happened to his mom, wanted to help kids who'd gone through something like he had. Before he left, we were packing up his room together. He pulled out something I hadn't seen in years, his old dinosaur shirt, the one he'd been wearing the day they took him. Somehow, it had made it through all the moves. He held it for a second, then tossed it into the donation pile, said he didn't need reminders anymore. When he turned 18, My ex tried to contact him directly. Social media, emails. He showed me each one. Not to ask permission, just to keep me in the loop. He blocked her every time. Calmly. No drama. He told me that meeting in the counseling center was all he'd needed. He'd said what he had to say. When Rachel and I had a daughter, during Caleb's sophomore year, he came home for her birth, held her in his arms, with such quiet care. It nearly broke me. He bent over his baby sister and whispered to her, "You're safe. You'll always be safe. Your big brother's got you." The nightmares had stopped years ago, but sometimes I still jolted awake in the middle of the night, thinking I heard him crying. Rachel would gently remind me, "Breathe." That same breathing technique that helped Caleb through panic attacks now got me through the echoes of my own trauma. Caleb graduated with honors. His thesis? The radicalization of social movements and how they tear families apart. His advisor told him it was one of the most insightful papers she'd ever read. He dedicated it to all the kids who survived someone else's belief system. He went on to grad school, built a practice. Dr. Caleb became known for helping kids caught in messy custody battles involving extreme ideologies. Sometimes he testified in court, his own story giving his expert opinion even more weight. The day he got married, I walked him down the aisle. His bride was a fellow psychologist, someone who understood where he came from, without ever defining him by it. I stood to give a toast, and in the crowd, I spotted Elena, tears running down her cheeks. She wasn't just a friend by then. She was family, real, chosen family. My ex-wife died when Caleb was 29. Prison had worn her down, and that toxic ideology she clung to left her completely alone by the end. Her group had long since collapsed. Most of them were either locked up or had changed their ways. But her? She never stopped thinking she was right. Caleb asked me to go to the funeral with him. There were only a few people there. He didn't speak, just stood in the back, quiet. Later, he told me he needed to see it end with his own eyes, to know the chapter was finally, truly closed. He named his son after me. Little Luca learned the breathing exercises as a game, not as survival. He grew up knowing bits and pieces of his dad's story, the kind a kid could understand. That sometimes, the people who should protect you don't. But that healing is always possible. I retired early to help out with the grandkids. Rachel and I bought a house with a big backyard, the kind of safe, open space I always wished Caleb could have had growing up. We hosted Sunday dinners. Caleb's family, my sisters, Elena's, all under one roof. Loud, messy, perfect. Sometimes Caleb's clients would tell stories that hit close to home. Kids caught in homes where belief systems were used as excuses to hurt them. Caleb helped them the way only someone who's been through it can, with empathy and skill that few people could match. The breathing exercises became a family tradition, not for trauma anymore, but for mindfulness, for gratitude. We do them before graduations, before weddings, before births. Breathe in peace. Hold on to love. Let go of the past. Caleb kept just one photo from his childhood, not one with his mom, one of us, taken a week after I got him back. We both looked worn out, bruised by life, but we were together. He framed it in his office, said it reminded him where the healing really began. The last time we really talked about those dark days in full detail was when his daughter turned 5, the same age he'd been when everything happened. He asked me, "Dad, how did you find the strength to fight so hard?" I told him it wasn't strength. It was love. Simple, protective, stubborn love. He got it then. Understood what I'd known all along. That protecting your child isn't about having all the answers or being some hero. It's about showing up, fighting through fear, holding on, even when the world tells you to let go. The scars didn't disappear. Not completely, but they faded into the background. Not the whole story, just one important chapter. They reminded us we made it. That truth, eventually, does rise. That love, real love, can outlast even betrayal. Caleb built a life out of the ashes. He helped hundreds of children, raised his own kids with a kind of wisdom that only comes from lived pain. And he proved his mother wrong. Every single day. Not by pretending it never happened, but by becoming a man who turned pain into purpose. And me? I learned that being a dad means going to war when you have to. That justice comes in more forms than I ever realized. That healing takes time, but it's real. That something as small as a breathing exercise can end up saving not just your child, but yourself. Most of all, I learned that love true, protective, unshakable love is the strongest thing in this world. It's what made me chase through the dark to find him. What helped him piece himself back together. What rebuilt our family stronger than before. Those women tried to teach my son that masculinity was poison, that fathers were dangerous, that boys had to be broken. Instead, he learned the truth. That extremism is the real danger. That good men and women stand side by side. That strength is protecting the people you love, while showing respect to those you don't even agree with. Our story isn't the kind you read in headlines. It's the quiet kind. It happens in therapy sessions, in bedtime routines, and backyard Sunday dinners. It's the story of a little boy who was told he was broken and grew up to help other broken kids heal. Sometimes, he and I still do the breathing exercises together, not because we need to, but because they connect us to where we've been and how far we've come. They remind us we survived. We won. Love conquered all. Thanks for sticking around and listening to my story. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss more true life stories just like this one.